The crack of a pistol shot split the dawn air as Gabriella Fanning ducked behind an overturned wagon, her heart hammering against her ribs like a wild Mustang. 3 days into her journey west, and now outlaws were picking through her scattered belongings while discussing what to do with her in voices that made her blood run cold. Montana Territory, 1876. This wasn't how Gabriella had imagined her fresh start. The schoolteacher's position in Willow Creek had promised safety, stability, and distance from the memories haunting her in Boston. Now those dreams seemed as scattered as her trunk contents across the dusty trail. "Find the woman," a gravelly voice commanded. "Boss wants no witnesses." Gabriella gathered her skirts, preparing to make a desperate run for the tree line when the thundering of hooves approached from the east. She pressed herself lower to the ground as gunfire erupted once more. "This here's Holden Crawford's land," a deep voice called out. "You boys best be moving on lest you're fixing to meet your maker today." More shots, screams, and then an eerie silence fell across the prairie. Gabriella remained motionless, afraid to breathe. "Madam." The voice was closer now, gentler. "You can come out now. They're gone." Slowly, Gabriella raised her head to find herself staring into the most piercing blue eyes she'd ever seen. They belonged to a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and a weathered Stetson. His revolver was holstered now, but the set of his jaw suggested he wouldn't hesitate to draw it again. "Are you hurt?" he asked, extending a calloused hand. "No," Gabriella managed, though her voice trembled. "Thank you for your intervention, Mr. Crawford." A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "You know me? I know your name from what you told those men." She accepted his hand and stood, brushing dust from her traveling dress. "I'm Gabriella Fanning. I was on my way to Willow Creek to take the teaching position." Something passed across Holden Crawford's face, a shadow of recognition, perhaps, or concern. Willow Creek's still 10 miles west. Those men, he nodded toward the retreating dust cloud, their Blackwell's gang. Been terrorizing these parts for months now. He surveyed the damaged wagon and scattered belongings. "You won't make it to town in this rig." Gabriella felt despair rising within her. "But I must get there. They're expecting me tomorrow." Holden considered her for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "My ranch is just over that ridge. You can shelter there tonight, and I'll take you into town tomorrow." Before she could respond, a horse whinnied nervously. Holden immediately reached for his gun. "Get behind me," he ordered softly. A lone rider appeared on the horizon, and Holden relaxed slightly. "It's just my foreman." The man approached cautiously, his weathered face registering surprise at Gabriella's presence. "Everything all right, boss?" "Heard gunfire." "Blackwell's boys," Holden replied grimly. "They scattered when they saw us coming." "Jake, this is Miss Fanning, the new schoolteacher. Her wagon's been damaged." Jake tipped his hat politely. "Madam." "Jake, help gather what's salvageable from Miss Fanning's belongings. We'll take her to the ranch for the night." As the men worked, Gabriella tried to process her situation. She'd heard stories about the dangers of the frontier, but nothing had prepared her for this reality. And now she was placing her trust in a stranger, a handsome one, certainly, but a stranger nonetheless. Once they'd salvaged what they could from the wagon, Holden helped her onto his horse. "Hope you don't mind riding double," he said, swinging up behind her. The proximity was unsettling. In Boston, such closeness would have been scandalous, but here, practicality seemed to override propriety. She could feel the solid wall of his chest against her back, his arms on either side of her as he held the reins. The Crawford Ranch came into view as they crested a hill, a sprawling main house with several outbuildings, all surrounded by vast grasslands where cattle grazed. It was larger and more established than Gabriella had expected. "Welcome to Pinewood," Holden said as they approached. "It's not much, but it's home." "It's beautiful," Gabriella replied honestly. The house itself was impressive, 2 stories of sturdy logs with a wide porch wrapping around the front. As they rode into the yard, the front door burst open, and 2 children raced out, followed by an older woman who moved more deliberately. "Pa!" the children shouted in unison. Gabriella felt Holden stiffen slightly behind her. He dismounted and then helped her down with gentle hands at her waist. "Emma, Daniel," he acknowledged the children with a nod. "This is Miss Fanning. She'll be staying with us tonight." The children regarded her with undisguised curiosity. The girl appeared to be about 10, with her father's blue eyes and blonde hair pulled into a practical braid. The boy was younger, perhaps 7, with the same coloring but a more solemn expression. The older woman approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm Martha," she introduced herself. "I keep house for Mr. Crawford and these 2 rascals." "Pleased to meet you," Gabriella replied. "I apologize for imposing." "Nonsense," Martha interrupted. "Any friend of Mr. Crawford's is welcome here." "Miss Fanning's wagon was attacked by Blackwell's gang," Holden explained. "She's the new teacher for Willow Creek." Recognition dawned on Martha's face. "Oh, we've been hearing about your arrival for weeks. The whole territory's been desperate for a proper schoolteacher." Holden turned to his children. "Emma, Daniel, show Miss Fanning to the guest room while Martha and I prepare something to eat." The children nodded, though neither smiled. There was a guardedness about them that struck Gabriella as unusual in one so young. "This way, miss," Emma said formally, already turning toward the house. The guest room was simple but comfortable, a bed with a patchwork quilt, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a small window overlooking the ranch yard. Emma set down Gabriella's salvaged carpetbag with careful hands. "Thank you, Emma," Gabriella said warmly. "You're very helpful." The girl nodded but offered no smile in return. "Supper's at 6, she said, and then both children disappeared down the hall. Gabriella sank onto the bed, the events of the day catching up with her. She'd nearly been killed, rescued by a handsome rancher, and now found herself in his home with his curiously reserved children. Nothing about this day had gone as planned. After washing up and changing into the one dress that hadn't been ruined in the attack, Gabriella made her way downstairs. The aroma of beef stew filled the house, making her realize how hungry she was. In the dining room, Holden was already seated at the head of the table, with Emma and Daniel on either side. Martha bustled in from the kitchen, carrying a steaming pot. "Ah, Miss Fanning." Holden stood as she entered. "Please, join us." Dinner was a quiet affair. The children answered direct questions, but volunteered nothing. Holden focused mainly on his food, occasionally asking Martha about ranch matters. Gabriella found herself filling the silence with stories about her journey west, carefully avoiding mention of why she'd left Boston. "So, Miss Fanning," Holden said finally, "what brings a city woman like yourself all the way to Montana territory?" Gabriella set down her spoon carefully. "I wanted a change, and there seemed to be a need for teachers out west." "There's certainly that," Martha agreed. "These 2 haven't had proper schooling since their mother." She stopped abruptly, glancing at Holden. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. The children stared at their plates. "My wife passed 3 years ago," Holden said quietly. "Fever." "I'm very sorry," Gabriella said softly. So many pieces falling into place, the children's reserve, the shadow in Holden's eyes. "Martha's done her best teaching them their letters," Holden continued. "But she has enough to manage with the house and such. I could perhaps help while I'm here," Gabriella offered impulsively. "As thanks for your hospitality." Holden studied her face, as if searching for something. "That's kind, but unnecessary." After dinner, Martha shooed the children upstairs for bed. Gabriella helped clear the table despite Martha's protests, then found herself alone with Holden on the porch. The vast Montana sky stretched above them, stars emerging like diamonds against black velvet. "It's beautiful," Gabriella murmured. "It is," Holden agreed. "Different from Boston, I imagine." "Very." She paused. "Mr. Crawford, I want to thank you again for what you did today." "Those men would have no need to think on that now," he interrupted. "Blackwell's gang has been a plague on this territory too long. Sheriffs organizing a posse, but they're elusive. Are you worried they might come here?" Holden's hand moved instinctively to where his gun would usually rest. "They know better. But it's why I don't like to leave the ranch for long." "The children?" Gabriella nodded, understanding his fear. "They seem like wonderful children, though perhaps a bit reserved," Holden suggested. "They weren't always. After their mother died." He trailed off, looking out at the darkened landscape. "They've forgotten how to be children, I think." The sadness in his voice touched something in Gabriella. "Children are resilient, Mr. Crawford. They just need time and patience. And I'm short on both, running this ranch," he admitted. "Martha does her best, but she's not their mother." "No one can replace their mother," Gabriella agreed. "But children need more than just memories. They need to create new joy. Holden looked at her then, really looked at her, as if seeing beyond the proper Boston schoolteacher for the first time. You speak from experience. It wasn't a question, but Gabriella answered anyway. My father died when I was 12. My mother never recovered from the grief. She existed, but she stopped living. The admission cost her, but something about the night, and this man made honesty feel necessary. I'm sorry, he said simply. It was a long time ago. Gabriella smiled faintly. But it taught me that grief can consume you if you let it. The conversation lulled into comfortable silence as they watched the stars. Eventually, Holden escorted her back inside, bidding her good night at the foot of the stairs. His eyes lingered on her face a moment longer than necessary before he turned away. In the guest room, Gabriella unpacked what little remained of her belongings. Most of her books had survived, protected in her trunk. She ran her fingers over the embossed leather cover of Robinson Crusoe, an idea forming in her mind. Morning came with the crowing of a rooster and the smell of coffee. Gabriella dressed quickly and made her way downstairs to find the kitchen empty except for Daniel, who sat at the table staring into a bowl of porridge. Good morning, she greeted him cheerfully. He looked up, startled. Morning, miss. May I join you? When he nodded, she served herself a small bowl from the pot on the stove and sat across from him. Do you like porridge, Daniel? He shrugged. It's all right. I used to pretend mine was quicksand, and my spoon was a brave explorer trying to escape. She demonstrated, making her spoon struggle dramatically through the porridge. Daniel watched her with wide eyes, but didn't smile. Where is everyone this morning? She asked. Pa and the men are checking fences on the north pasture. Emma's helping Martha with laundry. Gabriella nodded. And what will you do today? Another shrug. Dunno. Pa says I'm too small to help with ranch work yet. Well, I was wondering if you might help me with something. She leaned forward conspiratorially. You see, I rescued some books from my wagon yesterday, and I thought perhaps you and Emma might enjoy a story. Interest flickered in the boy's eyes. What kind of story? Oh, one with pirates and shipwrecks and survival on a deserted island. Daniel set down his spoon. Really, Gabriella confirmed. It's called Robinson Crusoe. Would you like to hear it after breakfast? For the first time, Daniel's expression brightened. I'll get Emma. He bolted from his chair and disappeared outside. Gabriella smiled to herself, finishing her porridge as she waited. Minutes later, Daniel returned with Emma in tow. The girl looked skeptical. Daniel says you're going to tell us a story? If you'd like, Gabriella replied. Though it's more fun if we read it together. Do you know your letters? Emma lifted her chin proudly. Pa made sure we learned our letters and numbers. I can read some. Excellent. Then you can help me. Gabriella retrieved the book from her room and settled with the children on the porch swing. She opened to the first page and began reading, occasionally asking Emma to read simpler passages. The children were completely absorbed. When Martha came to check on them an hour later, she found Daniel leaning against Gabriella's side, eyes wide with wonder, and Emma following along in the book, her finger tracing the words. Well, I never, Martha murmured, a smile creasing her weathered face. First time I've seen them so settled since. Gabriella looked up. We're exploring a deserted island, she explained with a wink. Martha nodded approvingly. Explore all you want. Lunch won't be for a couple of hours yet. They continued reading until Daniel's eyelids grew heavy. Even then, Emma asked, Can we read more later? Of course, Gabriella promised. Robinson's adventure is just beginning. By midday, Holden had not returned, and Martha explained he'd likely be gone until evening. Ranch this size always has something needing fixing, she said, especially with Blackwell's gang cutting fences and stirring up trouble. Does Mr. Crawford often confront them? Gabriella asked, concerned. Not if he can help it, Martha replied. He's got the children to think about. But he won't stand for lawlessness on his land, either. After lunch, Gabriella helped Martha with household tasks while the children completed simple chores. When Emma struggled with a difficult sum while calculating feed quantities, Gabriella stepped in to help. It's like a puzzle, she explained, breaking the problem into simpler steps. See how it works now? Emma nodded, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips when she got the correct answer. That's how Pa does it too. Your father is a smart man, Gabriella said. Ma used to teach us, Emma said suddenly. Before she got sick. Gabriella sat beside her at the kitchen table. You must miss her very much. Emma nodded, her eyes downcast. Pa misses her too. That's why he doesn't smile anymore either. The simple observation carried such weight that Gabriella felt her heart constrict. These children had lost more than their mother. They'd lost the joy in their home. Sometimes, Gabriella said carefully, when people are sad for a long time, they forget how to be happy. It doesn't mean they don't love you. How do you make them remember? Emma asked. Gabriella considered this. Sometimes you have to remind them. Show them it's still all right to laugh and play and find joy in small things. Emma seemed to ponder this. Then, with determination in her young face, she asked, Will you help us remind Pa? Before Gabriella could respond, the sound of approaching horses interrupted them. Holden and his men had returned. The rancher looked tired as he entered the house, dust coating his clothes and stubble darkening his jaw. His expression softened when he saw Gabriella and Emma at the table. Miss Fanning, he acknowledged. I see you've been keeping busy. Your children have been wonderful company, Gabriella replied truthfully. Pa. Daniel came running in from outside. Miss Fanning read us about a man trapped on an island with cannibals, and did she now? Holden raised an eyebrow, the ghost of amusement in his eyes. Robinson Crusoe, Gabriella explained. A classic adventure tale. Can she read more tonight, Pa? Daniel asked eagerly. Please. Holden looked from his son's animated face to Gabriella's hopeful one. I thought we'd be taking Miss Fanning to Willow Creek today. The children's faces fell immediately. Actually, Gabriella said slowly, surprising herself, I was wondering if I might impose on your hospitality for another day or two. The school term doesn't officially begin until Monday, and I could use the time to prepare my lessons. Holden studied her, and she wondered if he could see through her flimsy excuse. You're welcome to stay as long as needed, he said finally. But I wouldn't want to keep you from getting settled in town. One more night, at least, Gabriella pressed. I promised the children we'd continue our story. Something in Holden's expression softened. All right. One more night. That evening, after supper, Gabriella resumed reading Robinson Crusoe. This time, Holden joined them in the parlor, ostensibly reviewing ranch accounts, but increasingly drawn into the story. When Crusoe found footprints on his supposedly deserted island, Daniel gasped dramatically, and Gabriella caught Holden watching his son with tender surprise. The children went to bed reluctantly, extracting promises of more reading tomorrow. Once they'd gone upstairs, Holden poured himself a small whiskey and offered Gabriella a seat by the fire. You're good with them, he observed. It's been a long time since I've seen Daniel that animated. They're wonderful children, Gabriella replied. They just need encouragement to be children again. Holden swirled the amber liquid in his glass. When Sarah died, it was like the light went out of this house. I didn't know how to bring it back. You were grieving too, Gabriella said gently. A man doesn't have the luxury of dwelling on grief. The ranch doesn't run itself, and the children needed stability. There's a difference between providing stability and restoring joy, Gabriella pointed out. You've done admirably with the first. Perhaps it's time for the second. Holden looked at her with those penetrating blue eyes. And how does one do that, Miss Fanning? By remembering how to play, she said simply. By finding small moments of joy and holding on to them. He considered this, then asked, Is that why you came west? To find joy. Gabriella hesitated. I came west to escape memories, she admitted. My fiancé died last year influenza. Afterward, Boston held too many ghosts. Understanding passed between them the recognition of shared loss. Different, yet similar. I'm sorry, Holden said. As am I for your loss, Gabriella replied. But I've learned that new beginnings are possible, even after great sorrow. Their conversation continued late into the evening. Moving from grief to more hopeful topics, Holden's dreams for the ranch, Gabriella's plans for the school. There was an ease between them that surprised her, as if they'd known each other far longer than a single day. When Gabriella finally retired to her room, she stood by the window looking out at the vast Montana night. She'd come west seeking escape, but perhaps she'd found something else entirely. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Gabriella woke to the sound of laughter, a sound so unexpected it drew her immediately to the window. In the yard below, Daniel was chasing a chicken while Emma doubled over in giggles. Holden stood on the porch watching them, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Gabriella dressed quickly and went downstairs to find Martha kneading bread dough in the kitchen. "Good morning," Gabriella greeted her. "The children seem energetic today." Martha smiled knowingly. Amazing what a story and a bit of attention can do. That chicken got loose, and instead of getting upset, Mr. Crawford made a game of catching it. Through the window, Gabriella watched as Holden finally caught the errant chicken, presenting it to Daniel with an exaggerated bow that made both children laugh again. "He's trying," Martha said softly. "For the first time in a long while, he's really trying." After breakfast, Holden announced he needed to ride into town for supplies. "I could take you to Willow Creek now, if you're ready," he offered Gabriella. The children immediately protested. "But we haven't finished Robinson Crusoe," Daniel objected. "And Miss Fanning was going to show me how to diagram sentences," Emma added. Holden looked to Gabriella, one eyebrow raised in question. "I'm happy to stay with the children while you're in town," she suggested. "We can continue our lessons." Something like relief crossed his face. "I'd appreciate that. I shouldn't be more than a few hours." After he'd gone, Gabriella organized an impromptu school session. They moved the kitchen table outside under a large cottonwood tree, and she set up slates and chalk Martha found in a cupboard. "Today," she announced, "we're going to learn through play." She had them gather natural objects, pine cones, interesting rocks, feathers, and use these for counting exercises with Daniel and descriptive writing with Emma. When their attention began to wander, she taught them a spelling game she'd played as a child. By noon, both children were flushed with the pleasure of learning. Even Martha commented on their enthusiasm as she brought out sandwiches for lunch. "You have a gift," the housekeeper said privately to Gabriella. "Those children have come alive since you arrived." "They just needed someone to see them," Gabriella replied. "To really see them, not just the shadows of who they were before their mother died." After lunch, they continued with Robinson Crusoe, taking turns reading aloud. Emma's reading had improved markedly even in this short time, her confidence growing with each page. They were so engrossed that they didn't notice the approaching riders until they were nearly at the house. Gabriella looked up to see 5 men on horseback entering the yard. None of them was Holden. Martha stepped onto the porch, her expression instantly wary. "Children, inside," she commanded. "Miss Fanning, you too." Gabriella gathered the book and ushered the children toward the house, but the lead rider called out, "Hold up there, madam." With cold clarity, Gabriella recognized him, one of the outlaws from the wagon attack. Her blood froze. "Mr. Crawford ain't home," Martha said firmly. "State your business and move along." The man smiled unpleasantly. "Our business is with the lady teacher there. We have unfinished matters from yesterday." Emma and Daniel pressed closer to Gabriella's sides. She placed protective arms around them, mind racing. "There are no unfinished matters," Gabriella said as steadily as she could. "Please leave this property." The man dismounted, followed by his companions. "You're a witness, lady. Can't have you identifying us to the law." "I've seen nothing worth reporting," Gabriella lied. "I couldn't identify any of you." "Maybe," the man conceded. "But Blackwell don't like loose ends." "And now we find you cozying up to Crawford." He spat on the ground. "That makes you doubly interesting." Martha had disappeared inside momentarily and now returned with a shotgun. "I won't ask again," she said, raising the weapon. "Leave now." The outlaws laughed. "Old woman with a scattergun against 5 of us. Those ain't good odds." "The odds are about to get worse." The new voice came from behind the outlaws. Gabriella looked past them to see Holden at the edge of the yard, his revolver already drawn. Behind him were 3 of his ranch hands, similarly armed. The lead outlaw turned slowly. "Crawford, this doesn't concern you. You're on my land, threatening my household," Holden replied coldly. "That makes it very much my concern." Tension crackled in the air like lightning before a storm. Gabriella pulled the children closer, ready to push them into the house at the first sign of violence. "We just want the woman," the outlaw said. "Give her to us, and we'll ride out peaceful-like." Holden's expression hardened. "That's not going to happen. The lady is under my protection. Blackwell won't like that." "Blackwell can take it up with me directly," Holden replied, "though he seems to prefer sending his dogs to do his dirty work." The insult hit home. The outlaw's hand moved toward his gun, but Holden was faster. A shot rang out, and the man howled, clutching his hand where blood now flowed. "Next one goes between your eyes," Holden promised. Now get off my land." The wounded outlaw glared but backed toward his horse. His companions, seeing themselves outnumbered and outdrawn, did the same. "This ain't over, Crawford," the leader spat as they mounted. "Tell Blackwell I'll be waiting," Holden replied evenly. They watched in tense silence as the outlaws rode away. Only when they disappeared over the ridge did Holden holster his weapon and rush to where Gabriella stood with the children. "Are you all right?" he asked, genuine concern etched on his face as he checked each of them for injury. Gabriella nodded, though she couldn't quite control her trembling. "They recognized me from yesterday." "I feared as much," Holden said grimly. "They must have seen you with me in town and followed me back." He turned to his ranch hands. "Jake, take 2 men and make sure those vermin actually leave our property. The rest of you, double the guard tonight." As the men dispersed to follow orders, Holden guided Gabriella and the children inside. Martha immediately set about making tea, her hands still shaking slightly. "I'm sorry," Gabriella said once they were settled in the parlor. "I've brought danger to your home." "This isn't your fault," Holden assured her. "Blackwell and I have been at odds since he moved into the territory. He wants my water rights, and he's not above intimidation to get them." "Is that why they attacked Miss Fanning's wagon?" Emma asked, her voice small. Holden considered this. Maybe. Or maybe it was just ordinary thievery. Either way, you're safe now. But Gabriella wasn't so sure. "I should leave," she said. "Go to Willow Creek as planned. I don't want to put your family at risk." "And be alone in town?" Holden shook his head. "Blackwell's men would find you even more vulnerable there." "Then what do you suggest?" Gabriella asked. Holden's jaw tightened with resolve. "We end this. Blackwell's terrorized this valley long enough." "How?" Martha asked, bringing in the tea tray. "I've been talking with other ranchers and the sheriff. We were already planning to move against Blackwell's gang. This just makes it more urgent." "It's too dangerous," Gabriella protested. "Letting them continue unchecked is more dangerous," Holden countered. "For all of us." The children had been listening wide-eyed to this exchange. Now Daniel asked in a small voice, "Are the bad men coming back, Pa?" Holden knelt before his son. "Not if I can help it, Daniel. I promise you that." That evening, the ranch was on high alert. Holden's men patrolled the perimeter, and Holden himself checked and rechecked his weapons. Despite the tension, Gabriella insisted on continuing their nightly reading session, knowing the children needed the routine. "Will you finish the story even if you go to Willow Creek?" Daniel asked as she closed the book for the night. "Of course," Gabriella promised. "Perhaps you can visit me in town on Saturdays, and we can read together. Or you could visit us," Emma suggested hopefully. Holden, who had been listening from his chair by the fire, cleared his throat. "That's a discussion for another day. For now, it's bedtime for you two." After the children went upstairs, Holden poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offering one to Gabriella. She accepted it, though she rarely drank spirits. "Thank you," she said, "for protecting us today." "I would never let harm come to you or the children," he replied, his voice low and intense. "You know that, don't you?" The conviction in his words warmed her more than the whiskey. "I believe you." They sat in companionable silence for a moment before Holden spoke again. "The children have changed since you arrived." "Children respond quickly to attention and care," Gabriella said. "They're remarkable, Holden. They just needed permission to be happy again." It was the first time she'd used his given name, and the intimacy of it hung between them. "And what about their father?" Holden asked softly. "Does he have permission to be happy again too?" The question caught Gabriella off guard. She looked up to find him watching her with an expression that made her heart quicken. "Happiness isn't something that requires permission," she said carefully. "It's something you choose, day by day, moment by moment." "And if I were to choose it?" Holden set down his glass and moved to sit beside her. "If I were to admit that in the few days you've been here, you've brought more light into this house than it's seen in years?" Gabriella felt a flush rising to her cheeks. "I would say that's a beginning. A good one." Holden's hand covered hers, calloused but gentle. "I never expected to feel this way again," he admitted. "After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over." "I understand," Gabriella said softly. "When James died, I felt the same, as if my heart had been buried with him. And now—" She looked at their joined hands. "Now I'm beginning to believe in second chances." He reached up to tuck a stray curl behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. For a moment, Gabriella thought he might kiss her, and found herself hoping he would. But a noise from outside one of the ranch hands calling to another broke the moment. Holden withdrew his hand reluctantly. I should check the perimeter once more before turning in. Of course, Gabriella nodded, trying to mask her disappointment. As he reached the door, he turned back. Gabriella. It was the first time he'd used her given name as well. Thank you. For everything you've done for my children. For this house. You're welcome, Holden. After he left, Gabriella remained by the fire, her thoughts in turmoil. She'd come west to escape the past, not to find a new future. Yet in just a few days, this man and his children had worked their way into her heart. But with Blackwell's threats looming, what kind of future could they possibly have? Morning brought heavy fog rolling across the ranch, shrouding the buildings in ghostly white. Holden had been up most of the night with his men, and fatigue lined his face as he joined the family for breakfast. Any sign of trouble? Martha asked, setting a steaming cup of coffee before him. Holden shook his head. Nothing. But they'll be back. Blackwell doesn't give up easily. Maybe they're scared of Pa's gun, Daniel suggested proudly. Holden ruffled his son's hair. Maybe so, partner. But we'll stay vigilant just the same. After breakfast, Gabriella was helping Martha with the dishes when Holden approached her privately. I need to ride into town again, he said. The sheriff's gathering men to finally move against Blackwell's hideout. I'll be joining them. Fear clutched at Gabriella's heart. Is that wise? These men are dangerous. It's necessary, Holden replied grimly. As long as Blackwell operates freely, none of us is safe. Especially not you. When will you go? Tomorrow at dawn. The sheriff's deputy spotted Blackwell's gang returning to their hideout in Devil's Canyon. We need to strike while we know where they are. Gabriella gripped the dish towel tightly. Please be careful. Holden's expression softened. I have too much to live for not to be careful. The weight of his words, the promise in them, made Gabriella's breath catch. Impulsively, she reached up and touched his cheek. Then come back to us. His hand covered hers, pressing it more firmly against his face. I will, he promised. For the rest of the day, Gabriella threw herself into activities with the children, desperate to keep her mind off tomorrow's danger. She organized an arithmetic competition that had them racing to solve problems, rewarding correct answers with small treats Martha provided. By afternoon, even Emma was smiling openly, her initial reserve completely dissolved. When she correctly solved a particularly difficult division problem, she looked to Gabriella with such pride that it brought tears to the teacher's eyes. You're a natural mathematician, Gabriella praised her. Emma beamed. Ma was good with numbers too. She taught Pa how to keep the ranch books properly. Your mother sounds like she was a remarkable woman. Emma nodded. She was. Pa says I look like her. The girl hesitated, then asked tentatively, is it all right to be happy again, even though she's gone? Gabriella knelt to meet Emma's eyes. Your mother would want nothing more than for you and Daniel and your father to be happy. Being happy doesn't mean forgetting her. It honors her memory. Emma considered this, then nodded solemnly. I think you're right. She threw her arms around Gabriella in a spontaneous hug. I'm glad you came to stay with us. Gabriella held the child close, her heart full. So am I, Emma. So am I. That evening, the atmosphere was subdued. Holden spent time carefully cleaning his rifle and revolver at the kitchen table, while Gabriella continued reading Robinson Crusoe to the children. When they finished the chapter where Crusoe rescues Friday, Daniel yawned widely. Time for bed, Gabriella announced. We'll continue tomorrow. Promise? Daniel asked. Promise, she assured him, though she wondered if she'd be able to keep it, with Holden riding out to face danger at dawn. After putting the children to bed, Gabriella found Holden on the porch, staring out into the darkness. She joined him, wrapping her shawl more tightly around her shoulders against the night chill. The children are asleep, she said. Holden nodded. Thank you for being so good with them. They've changed so much in just these few days. Children are adaptable. They want to be happy. And what about you, Gabriella? Holden turned to face her. What do you want? The question hung in the air between them. Gabriella looked into his eyes, finding both hope and uncertainty there. When I came west, she said slowly, I wanted peace. I wanted to escape memories that were too painful. She took a deep breath. But now, I find myself wanting something else entirely. What's that? He asked, his voice dropping to a near whisper. A future, Gabriella admitted. One I never expected to find. Holden stepped closer, his hands coming to rest lightly on her waist. I want that too, he confessed. With you, if you'll stay. But what about Willow Creek? My teaching position. Willow Creek is just 10 miles away, Holden said. You could still teach there if you wish. Or, he hesitated. The children need a teacher too. Here. The implication of his words was clear. Gabriella's heart raced. Holden, are you asking? I know it's sudden, he said quickly. Too sudden, perhaps. But tomorrow I ride out to face Blackwell, and I need you to know how I feel. In case Gabriella pressed her fingers to his lips, stopping his words. Don't speak that way. You will come back. I will, he agreed. And when I do, if you're willing, I'd like to court you properly. To give us time to be sure. I'd like that, Gabriella whispered. Holden's hands tightened on her waist, drawing her closer. Slowly, giving her time to object, he lowered his head and touched his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle, questioning at first, then deepening as Gabriella responded, her arms sliding around his neck. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Holden rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since I first saw you behind that overturned wagon, he admitted. Gabriella smiled. Even covered in dust and terrified? Especially then. You looked so brave despite your fear. They stood wrapped in each other's arms for a long moment, savoring this newfound closeness. But reality intruded all too soon. I should get some rest, Holden said reluctantly. Dawn comes early. Gabriella nodded, though everything in her wanted to hold on to him, to prevent tomorrow from coming. Be safe, she whispered. I have every reason to be, he assured her, placing one more gentle kiss on her lips before releasing her. Gabriella barely slept that night, her mind filled with worry for Holden and confusion about her own rapidly changing circumstances. When she did drift off, she dreamed of outlaws and gunfire, waking with a start in the pre-dawn darkness. Dressing quickly, she made her way downstairs to find Holden already in the kitchen. He wore his gun belt and a determined expression that softened when he saw her. I didn't mean to wake you, he said. I wanted to see you off, Gabriella replied, accepting the cup of coffee Martha silently offered. They sat together at the kitchen table, speaking quietly so as not to wake the children. Holden explained his plan. The sheriff had gathered a posse of 15 men, including ranchers who'd suffered at Blackwell's hands. They would surround Devil's Canyon at dawn, catching the outlaws while they slept. It's the best chance we have of ending this without bloodshed, Holden concluded. Gabriella wasn't convinced, but nodded anyway. When will you return? By nightfall, God willing. He reached across the table, taking her hand. Will you be here? The question carried weight beyond today. I'll be here, she promised. The sound of horses outside signaled the arrival of Holden's ranch hands who would accompany him. Holden stood, checking his weapons one last time. Keep the children close to the house today, he instructed Martha. And Jake staying behind with 2 men to guard the property. Martha nodded. We'll be fine. You just focus on coming back in one piece. Holden turned to Gabriella. His eyes said everything his lips couldn't in Martha's presence. Until tonight, he said simply. Until tonight, she echoed. At the door, he paused, looking back at her as if committing her to memory. Then he was gone, striding across the yard to join his men. Gabriella stood at the window, watching until the riders disappeared into the misty dawn. Only then did she allow herself to acknowledge the fear that had been building since yesterday, fear that Holden might not return, that this newfound happiness might be snatched away before it truly began. He'll be back, Martha said quietly, coming to stand beside her. That man survived worse than Blackwell's gang. Gabriella appreciated the reassurance, though she suspected Martha was convincing herself as much as her guest. The children woke shortly after, disappointed to find their father already gone. Gabriella distracted them with breakfast, and then suggested they prepare a welcome home surprise for his return. What kind of surprise? Daniel asked, interested despite his worry. Well, Gabriella considered. Your father's been working very hard to keep everyone safe. What if we baked his favorite dessert? And perhaps you could draw pictures to show him how proud you are. This suggestion was met with enthusiasm. Martha mentioned that apple pie was Holden's favorite, and the kitchen soon became a flurry of activity as they prepared dough and sliced apples. Gabriella kept the children engaged by turning the baking into mathematics and science lessons, measuring ingredients, discussing how heat transformed the mixture. By midday, the pie was cooling on the windowsill, and the children had created elaborate drawings for their father. Daniel's depicted Holden as a hero facing down outlaws, while Emma's showed the whole family together in front of the ranch house, including Gabriella, she noted with a touched heart. The afternoon stretched endlessly. Jake reported no unusual activity around the ranch, but tension remained high. Gabriella tried to continue their reading of Robinson Crusoe, but found herself losing track of the narrative, her mind constantly straying to Holden and the danger he faced. As dusk approached with no sign of the returning men, Martha grew increasingly anxious, though she tried to hide it from the children. Gabriella suggested the children write stories about their favorite adventures with their father, keeping them occupied while the adults exchanged worried glances. Night fell completely. Daniel and Emma reluctantly went to bed after extracting promises that they would be woken when their father returned. Martha paced the kitchen, periodically checking the yard. They should have been back by now, she murmured. Gabriella nodded, her own worry threatening to overwhelm her. Could something have delayed them? Perhaps they're simply being cautious, traveling after dark. Perhaps, Martha agreed, though she didn't sound convinced. Another hour passed. Gabriella had taken to sitting by the window, straining to hear hoofbeats in the distance. When the sound finally came, she stood so quickly she knocked over her chair. "Someone's coming," she called to Martha. They rushed to the door, peering out into the darkness. A single rider approached, moving slowly. As he entered the circle of light from the house lanterns, Gabriella recognized Jake, one of the men who had accompanied Holden. Martha hurried out to meet him. "Jake? Where are the others?" The ranch hand dismounted wearily. "There was a fight, Mrs. Martha. Blackwell's men were ready for us." Gabriella's heart seemed to stop. "Holden?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Jake removed his hat. "Mr. Crawford was hit. Not bad," he added quickly, seeing the color drain from both women's faces. Bullet grazed his side. "Sheriff Jones is bringing him and the other wounded men in a wagon. They're about an hour behind me." Relief flooded through Gabriella, followed immediately by renewed concern. "And Blackwell? Dead," Jake said grimly. "Mr. Crawford got him, right after Blackwell shot him. The rest of the gang scattered or surrendered." Martha straightened, her practical nature taking over. "I'll prepare bandages and hot water. Miss Fanning, can you make up the sofa in the parlor? It'll be easier than trying to get him upstairs if he's wounded." Gabriella nodded, grateful for something concrete to do. As she arranged blankets and pillows, her mind raced with prayers and fears. Holden was alive, that was what mattered. Everything else they could face together. The wagon arrived shortly after midnight. Gabriella and Martha waited anxiously as Jake and the sheriff helped Holden into the house. He was pale and his shirt was stained with blood, but he was conscious, his eyes immediately seeking out Gabriella. "I told you I'd come back," he said weakly. Gabriella fought back tears as she helped settle him on the sofa. "You certainly know how to make an entrance." Sheriff Jones, a burly man with a graying mustache, explained that the bullet had grazed Holden's ribs. It bled plenty, but didn't hit anything vital. Doc Patterson patched him up in town before we headed back. Martha insisted on checking the bandages herself, shooing the men out while she and Gabriella tended to Holden. The wound was clean and already beginning to heal, though Holden winced when Martha applied fresh bandages. "You're lucky," Martha scolded. "A few inches to the left, and we'd be burying you next to Sarah." "Believe me, I know," Holden replied soberly. His eyes found Gabriella again. "The children. Asleep," she assured him. "We promised to wake them when you returned, but perhaps it's best to let them rest now and see you in the morning." Holden nodded, relief evident in his face. "And Blackwell? Jake told us," Gabriella said. "It's over. It's over," he agreed, reaching for her hand. Martha, observing this exchange with knowing eyes, announced she was going to make some broth for Holden. "You need something in your stomach with those pain powders the doctor gave you," she insisted before bustling out to the kitchen. Alone for a moment, Gabriella knelt beside the sofa, still holding Holden's hand. "You scared me," she admitted. "I scared myself," he confessed. When Blackwell fired and I felt the bullet hit, all I could think was that I might never see you or the children again. His fingers tightened around hers. It made me realize how much I want that future we talked about. So do I, Gabriella whispered. Holden lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Then stay. Not just tonight or tomorrow, but always. The children need you. I need you. Are you proposing, Holden Crawford? Gabriella asked, her heart pounding. Inelegantly, perhaps, but yes, he smiled despite his pain. I know it's sudden. I know we have much to learn about each other. But I also know that in just these few days, you've brought life back to this house and to my heart. Tears spilled onto Gabriella's cheeks. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll stay. Holden's smile was radiant even through his exhaustion. I've never been so happy to get shot. Gabriella laughed despite herself. Don't make a habit of it. Martha returned with the broth, pretending not to notice their clasped hands or tear-streaked faces. After ensuring Holden ate and took his medicine, she suggested Gabriella get some rest. I'll stay with him tonight, Martha offered. You've had a long day too. But Gabriella shook her head. I'll stay, she said firmly. If that's all right. Martha looked between them, then nodded with a small smile. I thought as much. I'll bring you a blanket. Left alone again, Gabriella settled into the armchair beside the sofa. Holden was already growing drowsy from the medication, but he reached for her hand once more. Tell me about Boston, he murmured. Tell me about your life before. So Gabriella talked softly about her childhood in Massachusetts, her years teaching at a girls' school in Boston, her brief engagement to James. Holden listened, fighting sleep to hear her story, occasionally asking questions that showed he was truly listening. In turn, he told her about growing up on this very ranch, meeting Sarah at a county fair when they were both 18, building the house with his own hands when they married. His voice grew thick with emotion when he spoke of Sarah's illness and death, and how lost he'd felt trying to raise two grieving children alone. You've done a wonderful job with them, Gabriella assured him. They're kind, intelligent, and resilient, all qualities they learned from you. They were withering, though, Holden admitted. Until you came. You reminded us all how to smile again. Eventually, the medicine overcame Holden's determination to stay awake. As his eyes drifted closed, he murmured, I love you, Gabriella. I think I have since that first moment by the wagon. Gabriella leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. I love you too, she whispered, realizing with perfect clarity that it was true. Morning brought the patter of small feet and hushed whispers as Emma and Daniel discovered their father on the parlor sofa. Gabriella, who had dozed in the armchair, awoke to find the children examining Holden with wide, worried eyes. Is Pa going to be all right? Daniel asked in a small voice. I'm just fine, partner, Holden answered, his voice rough with sleep but stronger than the night before. He reached out his hand, and Daniel took it immediately. You promised you'd be careful, Emma accused, though her relief was evident. And I was, Holden assured her. But sometimes even careful people get hurt. The important thing is that I came back, just like I promised. The children climbed carefully onto the sofa, one on either side of their father, mindful of his bandaged side. Holden wrapped his arms around them, holding them close. Gabriella watched this reunion with a full heart, knowing she was witnessing the healing of more than just Holden's physical wound. When he looked up and caught her watching, the love in his eyes took her breath away. Children, he said after a moment, I have something important to tell you. Miss Fanning has agreed to stay with us. Not just for a few more days, but permanently. Emma's head shot up, her eyes wide. You mean? Holden nodded. If it's all right with you both, Miss Fanning and I would like to marry. She would be your new mother. There was a moment of silence as the children processed this news. Gabriella held her breath, suddenly terrified that they might reject the idea, might see it as a betrayal of their mother's memory. Then Daniel launched himself from the sofa into Gabriella's lap. Does this mean you'll read to us every night? He asked excitedly. Gabriella laughed, relief flooding through her. Every night, she promised, hugging him close. Emma approached more cautiously, but her eyes shone with hope. Would you still teach us? Of course, Gabriella assured her. Both of you, and perhaps other children from nearby ranches as well, if we can arrange it. Emma considered this, then nodded decisively. I think Ma would approve, she said with the wisdom of a child who had known too much loss. She always said Pa was terrible at doing our hair. Holden let out a startled laugh that turned into a wince as it pulled at his injury. Your mother was right about that. The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality for Gabriella. Word spread quickly about Blackwell's defeat and the engagement between Holden Crawford and the new schoolteacher. The sheriff rode out to take Holden's formal statement about the shootout, congratulating them warmly on their betrothal. Town council's in a bind, he admitted with a grin. They finally got a schoolteacher, and now she's staying out here at Pinewood instead. I'll still teach in Willow Creek, Gabriella assured him. We can arrange for the ranch children to attend as well, perhaps with a schoolroom here for when weather makes travel difficult. The sheriff seemed satisfied with this compromise. Folks will be relieved. Education's important out here, where so many are working to build something from nothing. As Holden recovered, confined to the house by Martha's strict orders, Gabriella found herself falling into the rhythms of ranch life. She helped Martha with household tasks, continued teaching Emma and Daniel, and spent peaceful evenings with Holden, planning their future together. They decided on a Christmas wedding, giving them 2 months to prepare and allowing time for Gabriella to write to her few remaining relatives in Boston. Holden's wound healed quickly, and soon he was back to overseeing the ranch operations, though Gabriella noticed he delegated more tasks than before, making time for his family. One evening in late October, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson, Holden took Gabriella's hand. I've been thinking about names for the school, he said. Gabriella raised an eyebrow. The school already has a name. Willow Creek School. Not that one, Holden clarified. The one here at the ranch. For days when the weather's too bad for travel. And what have you decided? She asked, curious. Sarah Crawford Memorial School, he said softly. If that's all right with you. Tears welled in Gabriella's eyes. It's perfect, she whispered, squeezing his hand. She'll always be part of this family, part of these children. I would never want to change that. Holden pulled her close, kissing her tenderly. You are a remarkable woman, Gabriella Fanning. Soon to be Gabriella Crawford. I like the sound of that, she murmured against his lips. Inside the house, Emma and Daniel were finishing the last chapter of Robinson Crusoe under Martha's supervision. Through the window, Gabriella could see their animated faces as the story reached its conclusion. Look at them, she said, nodding toward the window. They're smiling again. Really smiling. Holden followed her gaze, his expression softening. Thanks to you. Thanks to us, Gabriella corrected. To this family we're building together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Pinewood Ranch, Gabriella reflected on the strange, wonderful journey that had brought her here. A wagon attack, a daring rescue, children in need of love, and a man who had shown her that second chances were not only possible, but beautiful. The dawn that had seen her nearly lose her life had led to nights filled with laughter and learning. The outlaw threat that had brought her to this house had given way to the promise of a future brighter than she could have imagined. What are you thinking? Holden asked, noticing her introspective expression. Gabriella smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. I'm thinking that sometimes the most unexpected journeys lead to exactly where we're meant to be. Christmas Day dawned clear and cold, the Montana landscape transformed by a blanket of pristine snow that sparkled in the winter sunlight. In the Crawford Ranch house, preparations for both the holiday and the wedding had reached their culmination. Martha had outdone herself decorating the parlor with pine boughs and red ribbons. The scent of cinnamon and roasting turkey filled the air. Upstairs, Gabriella stood before the mirror in Emma's room, hardly recognizing the radiant woman who looked back at her. Her wedding dress was simple but elegant cream-colored silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, ordered all the way from Denver. Emma, serving as her attendant, carefully arranged a crown of winter roses in Gabriella's dark hair. You look beautiful, the girl said softly, like a princess from one of your stories. Gabriella smiled, touching Emma's cheek gently. Thank you, sweetheart, for everything. A knock at the door announced Martha's arrival. The minister's here, she said, then paused, her eyes filling with tears. Oh my, don't you look a picture? Is everything ready? Gabriella asked, suddenly nervous. Martha nodded. The parlor's full to bursting. Half the territory's turned out, seems like, and Holden's pacing like a caged mountain lion. This made Gabriella laugh. Then we shouldn't keep him waiting any longer. Downstairs, the small parlor had indeed been transformed. Neighbors and friends from surrounding ranches and Willow Creek had gathered to witness the union, standing in every available space. At the far end, before the fireplace, stood Holden with Daniel at his side as his best man. When Gabriella appeared at the top of the stairs, a hush fell over the gathering. Holden's eyes never left her as she descended the stairs and walked toward him. His expression of awe and love made her heart swell. When she reached him, he took her hands in his. "You are the most beautiful sight I've ever seen," he whispered. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises not just of love and fidelity, but of partnership in building a life together, of nurturing the children, of honoring the past while embracing the future. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Holden gathered Gabriella into his arms for a kiss that drew cheers from their assembled guests. Emma and Daniel rushed forward to embrace them both, completing the circle of their new family. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening. There was feasting and dancing, stories and laughter. Gabriella found herself welcomed warmly into the community, no longer a Boston outsider, but Mrs. Crawford of Pinewood Ranch, teacher and now mother. As night fell and the last guests departed, Gabriella stood once more on the porch where she and Holden had first begun to acknowledge their feelings for each other. He joined her there, wrapping a warm blanket around them both against the winter chill. "Happy?" he asked, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied truthfully. Inside, Emma and Daniel were already asleep, exhausted from the day's excitement. Tomorrow would be their first full day as a complete family. There would be challenges ahead. Gabriella knew the harsh realities of ranch life, the continuing grief for Sarah that would never fully disappear, the balance of teaching both at home and in town. But looking up at the vast Montana sky, stars brilliant against the darkness, with Holden's strong arms around her, Gabriella felt only certainty. This was where she belonged. This man, these children, this life, all of it unexpected, all of it precious. "What do you see in the stars tonight?" Holden asked softly, following her gaze upward. Gabriella smiled, remembering how once she'd seen only emptiness in the night sky, a reflection of her own grief. Now she saw infinite possibility. "Our future," she answered simply. "And it's beautiful."